All right. Well, hello again, everyone. This is the fifth video for chapter two. We're going to talk about, look at the difference between organic and inorganic compounds, and then look at inorganic compounds. The next video will be about the organic compounds on their own. So let's look at these. So when we look at the molecules, remember back at the beginning we had the little list of the building material for the body. Atoms form molecules, macromolecules. Well, atoms and molecules, smaller ones, in general are going to be what we refer to as inorganic molecules. They're going to be small in most instances, very, again, very small, and they're generally ionic bonded, are the main ones. They're not all ions, but anyway, but they're small. On the other hand, we have something called organic molecules. Now, organic molecules are molecules made without pesticides. Sorry, just kidding. Couldn't resist that one. And they cost more at the grocery store. Now, the organic molecules are molecules by just the difference. They're just going to be huge. These are much bigger in general than the inorganic compounds. And the key to them are all organic molecules have to have carbon and hydrogen in them. All right. And they are going to be, again, very large molecules. It would be the equivalent of comparing one brick with an entire house. Very different in them. And so inorganic molecules, which are the ones found in life, organic molecules are only found in living things. They are going to be carbohydrates, proteins, lipids, and nucleic acids. Now, in the next video, we're really going to look at those and the building blocks, and they're really important. In this video, we're going to concentrate on the inorganic molecules, the inorganic compounds that are in our body. So with the inorganic substances, water again is the main one. Water is the main substance in the body anyway, and it is an inorganic substance. It is H2O. There's no carbon in it. Again, this is going to be an important role in transporting chemicals in the body because it's the main constituent of blood. It is going to be the medium, as it says here, for most metabolic reactions. And when it says most, it really is most. I mean, almost entirely. We're going to see that the driving force of these reactions, whether it is anabolic building up or catabolic breaking down, it all is about water. And pH, again, like we said the last time, is all about water. So water is a huge deal. It is a solvent. Remember, in chemistry, we talked about, you would talk about a solution is made up of a liquid portion, a solvent, and particles, which are solutes. We'll talk about that in the next coming chapter, or the one after it. But you got to remember that water, because it's the main constituent of the body, it is the main solvent for everything, and it has those little weak hydrogen bonds off to the side and the oxygen, and that's how it works. It pulls things apart with those little ionic bonds, or I shouldn't say ionic bonds, hydrogen bonds. So another pretty important inorganic substance is simply oxygen. Oxygen is needed by our body to release the energy that is bound up in the nutrients, especially glucose. And we use this oxygen to release it, and we call it aerobic respiration, which means with oxygen. It is vital because the difference between the energy we get without oxygen, which is about we'll say 2 miles to gallon for right now, the difference between without oxygen, 2 miles to the gallon, versus with oxygen, about 38 miles per gallon, is a huge range of difference. If you see well, I wouldn't even say an old car, let's say one of these big Humvees and the big machines that get probably 2 miles to the gallon versus a hybrid car that gets about 38, close to 40 miles per gallon. It's a big range, and that's how our body functions, and oxygen is needed to release that energy. So it's a very important thing, and without oxygen, you will shortly die. The next one is carbon dioxide. Now, I'll have students say, but it has a carbon in it, but that doesn't matter because there is no hydrogen in it. Once we start, it has to have a carbon and a hydrogen. And again, once you see how these Legos pile up, the organic molecules with carbon and hydrogen become very, very big. This is still a really small molecule. So carbon dioxide, one carbon and two oxygens. This is a waste product, actually, of the breakdown of glucose. So we take glucose, add oxygen, it breaks down into carbon dioxide and water and a molecule called ATP we'll talk about later. That's our energy. And it's interesting, we breathe out carbon dioxide and water, that goes into the air. Plants take carbon dioxide and water, and in the presence of light and a very special chemical in this little vesicle in the leaves, turns that into glucose, and the byproduct is oxygen. It puts oxygen in the air, oxygen goes around, we breathe it in. So it's this cycle. I mean, The Lion King was a pretty good movie, but they got it wrong. The circle of life is oxygen, glucose, carbon dioxide, water, glucose. And so it's pretty interesting when you see it all together, at least to me, but I am a little geek. So the next one is a category, not just one thing. It's called inorganic salts. Now can be very frustrating. Inorganic salts simply ends up being ions, which simply ends up being electrolytes. It's all kind of the same thing, and you'll talk about them in another area called minerals. So they're all in the same pool, but inorganic salts are going to be um, very prevalent in our body fluids, especially sodium ions. We're going to find that sodium ions are kind of the main ion, the king ion that our body uses to make things happen. I mean, salt gets a bad rap. We don't want too much, but this is a very important ion in our body, or electrolyte. And obviously calcium is going to be one, but this shows chloride and potassium. So these are ions that are around in our body, and they play a role not only in metabolism, but also in a lot of the different processes. We're going to see that when a neuron sends a signal on the axon, it's this little dance between potassium on the inside of the cell and sodium that starts on the outside of the cell. As sodium comes in and potassium goes out, this causes an electrical impulse to pass down the axon of a neuron, and that's how we send a signal. We're going to see all kinds of things. How muscles contract is all about calcium ions. So they're very important and around the body. And so, again, inorganic salts end up being electrolytes, which you could also say are ions, and we'll look at them as minerals when we talk about enzymes. So anyway, so the four basic inorganic substances: water, oxygen, carbon dioxide, and electrolytes or inorganic salts. Hope that makes sense. In the next video, we'll really get into the organic compounds, which are really the most important ones for us to get a grasp on, and we will work on that next.